Hey, good afternoon, my people. What's up? Hope and trust that all is doing good. Today is Tuesday, the third day of February, 2026, and the time right now is 2:37 p.m. Well, I just completed listening to the contribution that was made by Mr. Harold Lovell on Dave Lester Payne program yesterday being Monday. Persons would have told me certain things, but I wanted to hear for myself. I wanted to hear for myself what the contribution were, and I could have drawn my own conclusion. So I've done such. And I would say that Mr. Lovell, in relation to the public furor that came about in terms of leadership, for the most part, I would say that Mr. Lovell have represented himself well in terms of as a senior person in the party, what his thoughts are and what he sees going forward, what he would like to see going forward. And I am in agreement, or I can agree or understand or appreciate what he would have said. And I too am of the opinion that that should translate into something positive for the United Progressive Party going into the upcoming general elections. Um, some media persons might not be as happy with his position on certain issues. That's just my thinking. Um, and I'm not going to delve much into to nitpick what he said, what he should have said. Or, I'm not going to get into that. Um, I could have said before that I would have suspected that there would have been no convention because I would have heard also that based on certain factors, certain timelines, um, leading up to general elections, there's certain amendments or variants that could have been adopted in relation to the Constitution vis-a-vis the conference by what do you call it, the conference to change or to appoint or to elect leaders. But when I heard others in the media speaking, I said to myself, you know what, Dave, why make them any wiser? Let them go ahead. Let them go ahead with that. So I would have heard and known and drawn certain conclusions for myself, having read the Constitution of the United Progressive Party. As I said to y'all, I have a copy of the Constitution for both parties, both the Labour Party and the United Progressive Party. So I knew that. But when you see some people don't want to hear, you just leave them alone. Let them go ahead. So it's not going to be a surprise to me if the political party takes a particular course as it relates to that conference where you have leaders, knowing that the general elections, is just around the corner, both constitutionally and based on certain pressures internationally, it might force certain things. So I already suspected that certain things were going to happen. So that's not a problem for me. Um, Mr. Love would have said in relation to that variance, um, that is an understanding, that is a practice that the UPP would have had. The General Counsel refer them as. If a motion is moved for the suspension or for the suspension of this the process based on certain factors, um it has been done in the past, and that is the understanding that they have. And I understand that. But I'm a little bit worried about that. Right? I'm a little bit worried about that. When I say worried about that, I believe that that practice or that variant should be enshrined in the Constitution. the United Progressive Party constitution. I believe it should be. Why I say that? As you see that my backdrop says that I think it's in Jeremiah 17:9, where it says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Right? Now, you don't know what or who you will be dealing with 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You don't know where certain challenges might be. Whether or not somebody may want to challenge a practice as opposed to what the Constitution says. You don't know. And I would be more comfortable if that practice or if that variant is enshrined in the Constitution. That's just some free advice for the UPP. Well, the UPP is full of lawyers, so they might say, wait, who you advise us? But for whatever it's worth, that is my position. If you remember going back to the by-election that they had with Shuggy, we had all kind of interpretation of what the law said. Even the speaker himself, then initially, Sir Gerald Watt, he had his interpretation as to what should have happened and what should not have happened. And eventually the matter went to court and, it was just dealt with. As I said, you don't know who you're going to be dealing with in the future. And that's just my position. Again, or also, I should say, to go back to my text, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I'm going to give some advice again to the United Progressive Party. I said in a former recording, a few recordings back, we do not vote for a prime minister in Antigua. We do not vote for a prime minister in Antigua. As far as I know, there are 3 ways once to decide on a prime minister, to the best of my knowledge. The party who would have won the election, those members who are in the House, have been elected to the House, they would write to the Governor General, indicating to the Governor General who they would want to see as prime minister. That's the first way that I know. The second way that I know, or my understanding is, let me say what my understanding is that if that is not possible, whatever the reason, then the entire House, to include the opposition members, can decide on a prime minister. That's my understanding. And if that doesn't work, then the Governor General, in his or her discretion, would make the choice as to who he or she believes command the respect or the belief or the favor of the majority. That's my understanding. I'm not a lawyer. I can be corrected if I'm wrong. But if I'm right, and if a political party would vary its constitution leading up to a general elections, because whatever would probably come from that biannual conference would so fracture the party that it would affect their chances at the upcoming polls. If that consideration is given and practiced, and I would have suggested it ought to be documented, then it seems to make sense to me that also that constitution should say that the leader of the party, if the leader of the party wins his or her seat, ought to be the one who is elected as prime minister. I know that is going to be something that persons might say, hey, blah, blah, blah. I understand that, because the constitution of the country is higher than any constitution for any political party or other bodies. But what I think that you want to avoid as a political party is where you go into an election with a leader, the party wins, and then the person who you go in with as the leader, because of other persons, they say, no, we don't want that person to be prime minister. That, I believe, would have the same effect leading up to a convention, what would emanate leading up to a convention in terms of disunity. I think that if that was supposed to happen, where the leader going into the election won his seat, but having won his seat, then the majority of the persons who have won their seat say to the governor general, we don't want this person to be prime minister. We want that person to be prime minister. I think that thought should be given to that, and some level of safeguards be put in place. That is just my opinion, because again, as I said, you know who you're dealing with now. You don't know who you're going to be dealing with 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. For whatever it's worth, that is just my way of thinking. But as I said, I have listened, and let us see what happens going forward. Generally speaking, I agree with what Mr. Love would have said. I said that already, I don't want to say it again. Generally speaking, I agree. I do not agree with everything that Mr. Love would have said. I believe that sometimes when you have to speak the truth about people, it hurts, but it's the truth. It has to be said, and that's just my feeling on that. I might be, like, for instance, I'll give an example. I did a case for a guy, and he was telling another guy that I was doing the case for him, etc. And the guy who was talking to my client said, beef cantankerous and blah blah. So I said to him, the guy who was my guy, I said to him, so did you tell him that my cantankerousness led to you winning a case? And he smiled. So I just say that to say this. Sometimes when people speak truth, people see it in a way. So I knew what Mr. Lovell was referring to. I think, let me not say I know. I think I know what Mr. Lovell was referring to when he spoke about words and blah blah blah. And even though generally he's correct, in the unity part of it, sometimes you just have to tell people what it is. Sometimes you have to tell people what it is. And that too is a part of life. But let's push on and let's see what happens. Whether or not the suggestion is given any, or the suggestions are given any consideration, time will tell. And as I say, using the words of my father, if I'm not alive, the Antonym will bring the message. One way or the next. The Antonym will bring the message. Have a nice day, my people. Continue to enjoy your day. And until we come together again, big up yourself. Keep safe. Talk to you later.